That dress looks like it survived longer than your family's money. The words landed softly enough to sound almost polite, but the laughter that followed made their purpose clear. Emily Carter stood beneath the warm amber lights of the Silver Creek Ranchers charity dinner, one hand tightening around her small black clutch as half a dozen faces turned toward her. She was 27, pale from the Wyoming winter, with chestnut hair pinned neatly behind her ears and an old blue dress that suddenly seemed louder than anything else in the ballroom. Around her shimmered silk gowns, tailored jackets, polished boots, and jewelry that caught the chandeliers whenever someone moved. Emily's dress caught nothing. Its fabric had faded with time. The sleeves had been carefully shortened, the waist taken in by hand, and near one cuff, a nearly invisible line of stitching betrayed a repair made years ago. Vanessa Whitmore noticed it anyway. Of course she did. Wait, Vanessa said, stepping closer with a champagne glass balanced between her fingers. Is that actually vintage, or are we just being generous with the word old? Another ripple of laughter moved through the room. Emily felt her mother shift beside her. Margaret Carter wore her best gray coat and the expression of a woman trying desperately not to let her daughter see that she was hurt. Emily, Margaret whispered, we can leave. Emily swallowed. Leaving would be easier. Their little house was only 8 miles away. She could change into jeans, make coffee with her mother, and pretend none of this had happened. Then Vanessa lightly touched the repaired edge of Emily's sleeve. My goodness, it's even patched. Emily pulled her arm back. The laughter came again, quieter this time, but somehow worse. Margaret lowered her eyes. That decided it. Emily straightened her shoulders. It was my mother's. Vanessa blinked. Excuse me. The dress, Emily said, her voice steadier now. It belonged to my mother. The smile on Vanessa's face sharpened. Some families pass down diamonds. A woman beside her covered a laugh with her hand. Emily looked at Margaret. For 1 second, the ballroom disappeared. She remembered that same blue fabric spread across their kitchen table, her mother guiding a needle through the hem beneath the yellow light above the stove. She remembered Margaret saying they could probably find something newer at a discount store. Emily had refused. Newer did not mean better. More expensive did not mean more valuable. I like this one, Emily said simply. Vanessa tilted her head. Clearly, across the ballroom, near a stone fireplace decorated with pine branches, a tall man in a dark denim shirt slowly lowered his coffee cup. Dust still marked the edges of his brown cowboy boots, as though he had come straight from a ranch instead of spending an hour preparing to impress the county's wealthiest families. Cole Bennett had barely spoken all evening. He had declined photographs, ignored the people trying to draw him into business conversations, and chosen the quietest corner in the room. But now he was watching Emily. Not the dress. Her. He saw the way her fingers trembled once before becoming still. He saw Margaret's embarrassment. He saw Vanessa enjoying an audience that had mistaken cruelty for entertainment. Cole's jaw tightened. He could have crossed the room. One sentence from him would have changed the mood instantly. One introduction would have changed far more. But he remained beside the fireplace, silent, watching as Emily took her mother's hand. Then Emily looked directly at Vanessa and said, maybe some things are worth keeping because of who wore them, not what they cost. The laughter stopped. For the first time that evening, Cole Bennett smiled. The drive home took less than 15 minutes, but Emily barely spoke. Snow from the previous week still clung to the shoulders of the Tulane road, glowing beneath the headlights of Margaret's aging sedan as open fields disappeared into the Wyoming darkness. Margaret kept both hands on the steering wheel until their small white house came into view. Only after they stepped inside did she finally say, I am sorry. Emily stopped halfway through removing her coat. For what? Margaret looked toward the blue dress. For letting you wear something people could use against you. Emily stared at her mother. Mom, they did not laugh because you gave me an old dress. They laughed because they needed something to make them feel taller. Margaret tried to smile, but her eyes dropped. Their kitchen had changed little since Emily was a teenager. The oak table carried scratches from years of meals and unpaid bills. A ceramic sugar bowl sat beside a coffee maker that needed 2 tries before it worked. Nothing matched, but everything had a history. Emily walked upstairs, changed carefully, then returned with the blue dress folded across her arms. Margaret was sitting at the table when Emily laid it between them. Do you remember when you wore this? Emily asked. Margaret touched the fabric with 2 fingers. Your father took me dancing in Cheyenne. We had $43 until payday, and he spent 12 of it on dinner. Emily smiled. You told me he regretted it. He regretted ordering dessert, never the dinner. They both laughed softly, and for the first time since leaving the charity event, the tightness in Emily's chest eased. Margaret turned the dress over and found the hem. A line of tiny white stitches ran along the inside, almost hidden beneath the faded blue fabric. I did this the night before that dance, she said. The hem came loose, and I was too stubborn to buy another dress. Emily traced the stitches. They were not perfect. Some were closer together than others, but they had held for nearly 30 years. That is why I kept them, Emily said. Margaret looked up. You noticed? Of course I noticed. Emily had altered almost every other part of the dress herself. She had reshaped the waist, repaired the sleeve, replaced 2 buttons, and strengthened the seams. But she had never touched those white stitches. They belonged to another version of her mother, one who still had a husband waiting beside the kitchen door with truck keys in his hand and a cheap dinner planned in Cheyenne. Margaret sighed. I just wish I could give you more. Emily reached across the table. You did. Margaret squeezed her hand. Outside, wind moved softly across the porch. Emily looked down at the old dress and thought about Vanessa's diamonds, the expensive gowns, and the laughter that had followed her across the ballroom. Then she remembered something else. The quiet cowboy near the fireplace. He had watched everything. He had not laughed. He had not looked away either. For reasons Emily could not explain, that bothered her almost as much as Vanessa had. She folded the dress carefully and carried it upstairs. Tomorrow morning, she would return to the alteration shop, where torn sleeves, broken buttons, and worn-out coats waited for her hands. Emily understood those things. Something damaged did not automatically become worthless. Sometimes all it needed was someone willing to see what could still be saved. By 9 the next morning, Emily was standing behind the counter at Miller Alterations with a measuring tape around her neck and a paper cup of coffee growing cold beside the register. The shop sat between a hardware store and a family diner on Main Street, where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business before lunch. Emily preferred fabric. Fabric did not gossip. A torn seam told the truth about what it needed. She was replacing a zipper on a canvas work jacket when the brass bell above the front door rang. Morning, a deep voice said. Emily looked up and immediately recognized the cowboy from the charity dinner. He wore faded jeans, a dark flannel shirt, and brown boots carrying a thin layer of ranch dust. In one hand was a heavy tan coat with a tear near the pocket. Can you fix this? He asked. Emily took the coat and examined it. Probably. What happened? Fence. The fence win. His mouth curved slightly. This round. She almost smiled, then remembered the ballroom. You were there last night. The amusement disappeared from his face. I was. Emily placed the coat on the counter. You probably think I do not remember you. Actually, I figured you might. You were the man who watched. The word stopped him. For a moment, the only sound in the shop was the quiet ticking of the wall clock. Cole glanced toward the front window, then back at her. Yes. Emily had expected an excuse. Instead, he simply accepted it. That made her irritation harder to hold. Most people either laughed or looked away, she said. You did neither. I should have said something. But you did not. No. Cole rested one hand on the counter. I spent too much of my life believing silence keeps things from getting worse. Emily studied him. There was no performance in his voice, no attempt to turn an apology into charm. And does it? She asked. Not usually. She looked down at the torn coat. At least you learn quickly. I try. Emily inspected the damage more closely. The canvas was worn, but good quality. I can reinforce this from the inside. You will still see a little of the tear. That is fine. Most customers want repairs invisible. Cole shrugged. A coat does not have to look new to still be worth wearing. Emily's fingers stopped. The sentence felt strangely familiar, almost like an echo from her kitchen the night before. She raised her eyes. You really believe that? I would not have brought it here if I did not. She wrote his name on the repair ticket. Cole Bennett. Emily Carter. I know. Her eyebrow lifted. Cole realized how that sounded. Someone said your name at the dinner. Right. Emily handed him the claim slip. Friday afternoon. Cole took it, but did not leave immediately. For what it is worth, I thought the dress was beautiful. Emily folded her arms. You came here to repair a coat, Mr. Bennett. Not my confidence. Fair enough. He reached for the door, then paused. But I was not talking about the dress. Emily stared at him. Cole gave her a quiet nod and stepped onto Main Street. Through the window, she watched him cross toward an old pickup parked by the curb. Only after he drove away did Emily notice something unusual about the coat still lying beneath her hands. The tear looked real, but the rest of it was almost perfectly maintained. She ran her thumb over the damaged canvas and wondered why a man who seemed capable of repairing his own fence had driven into town just to ask her to mend one small pocket. Friday afternoon, Cole returned exactly 5 minutes before closing. Emily was standing behind the counter with his tan coat folded neatly beside the register. "Perfect timing," she said. "I was beginning to think you abandoned it." Cole picked up the coat and examined the repaired pocket. The stitching was strong, clean, and almost invisible unless he knew where to look. "You made it better than it was." "I repaired it." "There is a difference." "You always this particular?" "Only when people exaggerate." He smiled, paid the bill, and left. Emily assumed that would be the end of it. 3 days later, the bell rang again. Cole walked in carrying a pair of leatherwork gloves with a split seam. The following week, it was a saddle blanket with a frayed edge. Then came another canvas jacket with 2 loose buttons. By the 4th visit, Emily placed both hands on the counter and stared at him. "Do you destroy something every week just to give me work?" Cole looked down at the jacket as though considering the accusation seriously. "Ranching is hard on clothes. Apparently your ranch is at war with everything you own." He laughed, and Emily finally did too. The visits became something she expected without admitting she expected them. Cole usually arrived late in the afternoon, when Main Street grew quiet and sunlight stretched across the wooden floor. He brought coffee from the diner next door, always remembering that Emily took hers with cream and no sugar. She learned that he ran cattle outside town, preferred old trucks to new ones, and had inherited ranch land from his father. Cole never offered numbers, and Emily never asked. Wealth had become the least interesting thing about him. One Saturday, he found her bent over a sketchbook behind the counter. "What is that?" Emily closed it too quickly. "Nothing." That looked suspiciously like something. She hesitated, then opened the book. Pages of pencil drawings showed denim jackets, work shirts, riding coats, and practical Western clothing shaped with details Cole had never seen in a store. "You designed these?" "Mostly when business is slow." Cole studied a drawing of a ranch jacket with reinforced elbows and deeper pockets. "Why is this seam double?" "Because most work jackets fail there first." She pointed to the shoulder. "People design ranch clothes to look rugged. I would rather make them survive actual ranch work." Cole looked at her differently then, not with pity or casual admiration, but attention. "You should make these." Emily gave a small laugh. "Fabric costs money. Equipment costs money. Selling them costs even more." "That does not mean the idea is bad." "I did not say it was bad. I said it was expensive." Cole nodded, understanding the distinction. Before leaving, he glanced at the repaired saddle blanket hanging behind the counter. "My father used to keep everything," he said. "Old tack, tools, even a coffee mug with a cracked handle. Drove me crazy. Why keep broken things?" He said replacing something was easy. Knowing what deserved repairing was harder. Emily became quiet. Cole looked toward the window. "After he died, I understood." For the first time, Emily saw something beneath his calmness that resembled her own. They were both surrounded by things left behind by people they loved. She repaired fabric. He preserved land. Neither of them seemed particularly good at letting go. Cole reached for his coat, then paused at the door. "There is a Western Heritage Gala next month. Local designers are submitting work for the showcase." Emily shook her head immediately. "That crowd is not exactly my crowd." "Maybe not." He glanced at her sketchbook. "But your work might be." After he left, Emily stared at the closed door, then slowly looked down at her drawings. For years, they had been nothing more than pencil lines on cheap paper. That afternoon, for the first time, she wondered what might happen if she stopped treating them like something that needed to stay hidden. 3 weeks later, Emily stood beneath the high timber beams of the Western Heritage Gala with her heart beating harder than it had the first time she entered that room. Her work jacket was displayed beneath warm lights near the center of the showcase, surrounded by polished pieces from established Western brands. She had made hers from heavy brown canvas, reinforced the shoulders, doubled the seams, and added deeper pockets based on complaints she had heard from ranch workers for years. Her name appeared on a small card beneath it. Emily Carter, Silver Creek, Wyoming. Seeing those words made her almost forget how nervous she was. Almost. Margaret stood beside her, smiling proudly. Your father would have told everyone in the county you made that. Emily touched her mother's hand. He probably would have exaggerated. Absolutely. Tonight, Emily had chosen the blue dress again. She could have borrowed something newer from the shop owner, but when she opened her closet, she knew exactly what she wanted to wear. The old fabric rested comfortably against her, and the white stitches inside the hem remained untouched. This time, she did not feel underdressed. She felt like herself. Then a familiar voice drifted from behind her. You cannot be serious. Vanessa Whitmore approached with two women beside her, her silver gown catching every light in the room. Her eyes traveled from Emily's face to the faded blue fabric. You wore it again? Emily remained still. Good evening, Vanessa. Vanessa glanced toward the display. And this is yours. It is. How charming. She stepped closer to the jacket, examining the reinforced seams. Very practical. The words sounded less like praise than permission to laugh. Emily refused to give her the reaction she wanted. Vanessa turned toward Margaret. Some families pass down diamonds. I guess yours passes down patches. Margaret's smile disappeared. Emily felt something inside her tighten, but before she could answer, a man's voice came from behind them. That might be the smartest thing they passed down. Vanessa turned. Cole Bennett stood a few feet away wearing a charcoal jacket over a clean white shirt, though his familiar brown boots remained. He walked toward Emily and stopped beside her, not in front of her. Excuse me, Vanessa asked. Cole looked at the blue dress. Those repairs were done by hand. Emily followed his gaze. My mother did the hem. Cole nodded. And the sleeve? I repaired that. Then I would say the dress tells you exactly where her talent came from. Vanessa gave a small, uncertain laugh. We were only joking. A joke usually works better when everyone is laughing. The room around them had grown quiet. Cole did not raise his voice. He did not insult Vanessa. Somehow, that made his words carry farther. He turned toward Emily's work jacket. Most companies reinforce the elbows and call something durable. She reinforced the stress points at the shoulder, widened the inside pocket, and changed the side seam so it does not pull when someone reaches from horseback. Emily stared at him. You noticed all that? I run cattle. I notice when clothes work. Then he looked back at Vanessa. There is nothing embarrassing about repairing something worth keeping. Margaret lowered her eyes, but this time it was to hide a smile. Vanessa's confidence flickered. Before she could respond, a sharply dressed man hurried through the crowd toward Cole. Richard Whitmore followed close behind, suddenly wearing an expression Emily had never seen on his face before, concern. The first man stopped beside Cole and spoke quietly but clearly enough for Emily to hear. Mr. Bennett, the board is ready for you. Cole's expression changed. Emily looked from him to Richard, then toward the stage where several executives were waiting. Richard Whitmore extended his hand eagerly. Cole, I did not realize you had arrived. Emily felt the room shift around her. People who had barely noticed the quiet cowboy moments earlier were now watching his every move. Cole looked at Emily, and in that brief silence, she understood one thing with absolute certainty. The man standing beside her had never been just another rancher. Emily barely heard the applause as Cole walked toward the stage. The same man who had stood in her alteration shop with dusty boots and torn work clothes now moved through the ballroom as executives stepped aside to greet him. Richard Whitmore stayed close, smiling with sudden eagerness, while Vanessa stood frozen near Emily's display. Ladies and gentlemen, the event host said, please welcome Cole Bennett, owner and president of Bennett Ranch Holdings. Emily felt her stomach drop. Bennett Ranch Holdings. Even she knew the name. The company controlled cattle operations across Wyoming and neighboring states, supplied premium beef to national restaurant groups, and owned thousands of acres of ranch land. Local businesses had spent months talking about the new long-term supply contracts Bennett Ranch Holdings planned to award. Richard Whitmore had spoken about winning one as though it were already his. And Cole was the man making the decision. Emily looked toward Margaret. Her mother seemed equally stunned. On stage, Cole accepted the microphone without the polished enthusiasm of the businessmen around him. My father used to say a ranch is only as strong as the people willing to take care of it, he began. Land matters. Cattle matter. Numbers matter. But none of them mean much without people who understand the difference between price and value. Emily's eyes dropped to the blue dress. Suddenly, every conversation with him returned differently. He ran cattle. He had inherited land. He preferred old trucks. Every statement had technically been true, yet none had told her the truth she thought she was hearing. Cole continued speaking about local craftsmanship and announced that Bennett Ranch Holdings would expand its purchasing program to include independent regional makers. Applause filled the room. Emily did not join it. Vanessa stepped closer to her, embarrassment replaced by calculation. "You knew?" she whispered. "No." Emily's answer came too quickly to be mistaken. Vanessa studied her face and apparently believed her. Across the ballroom, Richard shook Cole's hand for photographers, laughing as though they were old friends. Cole remained courteous, but his eyes kept returning to Emily. When the formal announcement ended, he left the stage almost immediately. Emily was already moving toward the side doors. "Emily." She stopped but did not turn. Cole approached carefully. "I was going to tell you." She faced him. "When?" "Soon. Before or after I figured it out in a room full of people." His expression tightened. "I never lied about what I did. You said you ran cattle." "I do." Emily gave a quiet, disbelieving laugh. "Cole, a man with 20 cows can say he runs cattle. A man whose company signs contracts worth millions can also say it. Those are not the same conversation." He had no answer. That hurt more than she expected. "Why?" she asked. Cole glanced toward the ballroom. "Because once people know what I have, they stop talking to me and start talking to Bennett Ranch Holdings." Emily understood the loneliness in that sentence. A month ago, she might even have forgiven it immediately. But then she remembered all the evenings when she had shown him her sketches, admitted what she could not afford, and told him things she had never offered casually. "So you tested me?" "No, then what did you do?" Cole lowered his voice. "I wanted a little time where you saw me before you saw everything attached to my name." Emily looked at him for a long moment. "You got that choice." "I did not." The words landed between them. Before Cole could answer, an event coordinator approached and told him the board needed him for the contract presentation. Emily stepped away. "You should go, Mr. Bennett." Hearing the formal name from her sounded colder than any accusation. Cole remained still as Emily returned to her mother. For the first time that evening, the millionaire everyone wanted to speak with looked like the loneliest man in the room. Emily waited until Margaret had gone inside before she turned back toward the quiet street. The gala had ended nearly an hour earlier, and cold Wyoming air moved across the parking lot, carrying the faint smell of pine and dry grass. She had just reached their sedan when headlights swept across the pavement. Cole's old pickup stopped several yards away. He stepped out slowly, still wearing the charcoal jacket from the event, but without the crowd around him, he looked more like the man who had walked into Miller Alterations with a torn coat. "Emily." She closed the car door without getting inside. "You followed us. I wanted to finish the conversation. You had plenty of chances to start it." Cole accepted that without argument. "You are right." Emily folded her arms against the cold. "Do you know what bothers me most? It is not the money." "I know." "Do you?" Her voice remained calm, which somehow made the disappointment sharper. "I told you about my father. I showed you designs I was embarrassed to show anyone. You knew I could barely afford the materials to make one jacket. All that time, you knew exactly who you were, and you let me build a completely different picture." Cole looked toward the empty road. "I never wanted you to feel small around me. Then you should have trusted me enough to decide how I felt." He looked back at her. "People change when they hear my last name. Maybe some do, but you decided I would before giving me the chance." Cole had spent years negotiating contracts without hesitation, but now every answer seemed inadequate. After my father died, people I had known my entire life started treating me differently. Some wanted favors. Some wanted access. Some suddenly became interested in being close to me. I got tired of wondering what was real. Emily's expression softened for only a second. "I understand why you were afraid." Cole took a breath. "Then maybe you understand why I waited." Understanding is not the same as excusing it. Silence settled between them. Emily opened the back door and reached inside. When she turned around, Cole recognized the tan ranch coat in her hands. The pocket she had repaired was still perfect. She held it toward him. "You left this at the shop after I reinforced the lining last week." Cole did not take it immediately. "Keep it there. I will pick it up later." Emily shook her head. "Take it now." Something in her voice made him reach for it. For weeks, that coat had been an excuse to walk through her door. Now it felt like a boundary being placed carefully between them. Emily, I do not want this to be the end. Neither did I. Her answer surprised him. But wanting something does not make it trustworthy. Cole looked down at the repaired seam. What am I supposed to do? Emily almost smiled at the question, but there was sadness in it. For once, do not use your name, your company, or your money to fix something. She stepped toward the driver's door. Then how do I fix this? You figure out whether you can. She got into the sedan and drove away, leaving Cole beneath the parking lot lights with the old coat folded over his arm. 3 days later, Emily arrived at Miller Alterations and found the owner, Susan Miller, waiting beside the register with a letter in her hand. Susan looked uncomfortable. Emily, we lost the Whitmore account. Emily stopped. The Whitmores represented nearly a quarter of the shop's commercial work. Why? Susan hesitated. Richard says they are moving their business elsewhere. Emily understood immediately. Susan placed the letter on the counter, and he made it clear that keeping you here could affect other contracts. Emily stared at the paper. Across town, Cole Bennett was about to learn that staying silent was no longer an option. By noon, half of Silver Creek seemed to know that Miller Alterations had lost the Whitmore account. Emily knew because 3 customers came in pretending to browse Thread while asking whether she was all right. Susan knew because 2 other commercial clients called with nervous questions. Cole knew because his operations manager placed a printed email on his desk at Bennett Ranch headquarters. Whitmore is telling local vendors that businesses connected to Emily Carter may have trouble getting regional contracts, the manager said. Cole read the message twice. His first instinct was immediate. Call Susan. Replace every dollar Miller Alterations had lost. Put Emily on the Bennett payroll. Make the problem disappear before sunset. Then he remembered her words. Do not use your name, your company, or your money to fix something. Cole leaned back. What is the status of our workwear contract? Still under review. Open it. His manager frowned. To whom? Everyone. Independent designers, small manufacturers, established brands. Same specifications. Same deadline. Blind judging for the first round. And Emily? Cole looked at the email again. She gets exactly what everyone else gets. Nothing more. 2 days later, Miller Alterations received the public request for proposals. Susan slid the packet across the counter. You should enter. Emily read the requirements. Durable ranch jackets, reinforced work shirts, practical cold weather layers, all designed for daily use across Bennett operations. Cole did this. Maybe. Emily shook her head. Then I cannot accept. Susan tapped the page. Accept what? An application form? He did not give you a contract. He gave the whole stated deadline. That night, Emily spread sketches across the Carter kitchen table. Margaret brought coffee and quietly sat beside her. Are you afraid people will say he handed it to you? Yes. Then make something so good they cannot. Emily looked at the old blue dress hanging nearby. Her eyes settled on the white stitches inside its hem. Small, uneven, still holding after nearly 30 years. She picked up her pencil. For the next 3 weeks, Emily worked after closing time. She strengthened shoulder seams using the same principle Margaret had used on the dress, redesigned pockets for gloved hands, and built movement into the jackets for riders reaching across a saddle. The first round samples were submitted under numbers instead of names. Cole refused to sit on the judging panel. When the scores came back, sample 47 ranked first in durability, function, and repairability. Only then was the envelope opened. Emily Carter. Cole stared at her name and smiled. Not because he had rescued her, because she had won without him. The following morning, Emily received the call. She stood speechless behind the counter while Susan covered her mouth with both hands. Bennett Ranch Holdings wanted a 12-month production agreement, beginning with a limited regional order and expansion based on performance. Across town, Richard Whitmore received different news. Bennett's compliance review had documented his attempts to pressure local vendors during an active bidding period. His company was removed from consideration under Bennett's supplier conduct rules. No public humiliation, no revenge, just consequences written plainly on company letterhead. That afternoon, Cole entered Miller Alterations wearing the tan coat Emily had repaired. He stopped several feet from the counter. Congratulations. Emily searched his face. Did you know which sample was mine? Not until the scoring was finished. Were you on the panel? No. She looked down at the contract in front of her. So you really did not give this to me. Cole glanced at the repaired pocket of his coat. You told me not to use money to fix things. Emily met his eyes. And for once, you listened. I am learning. A small smile appeared before she could stop it. Cole did not ask for forgiveness. He did not ask for dinner. He simply nodded toward the contract. Your work earned that, Emily. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Then he turned toward the door. Cole. He stopped. Emily looked at the old coat, then at the man wearing it. Coffee tomorrow? For the first time in weeks, his smile reached his eyes. Cream, no sugar? Emily smiled back. You remembered. Some things are worth remembering. 1 year later, Emily stood inside Carter Western with sunlight spilling across rows of canvas jackets, work shirts, and riding coats carrying the small stitched label she had once imagined only on paper. The shop occupied a renovated storefront 2 blocks from Miller Alterations, and Susan had insisted on helping Emily hang the first sign herself. Bennett Ranch Holdings remained her largest customer, but not her only one. Orders now came from ranches across Wyoming, Montana, and Colorado. Margaret handled the books 3 mornings a week and still complained whenever Emily tried to pay her too much. That evening, Emily closed early for the annual Western Heritage Gala. Upstairs, Margaret waited beside the garment rack with a new navy dress Emily had made for herself. You could wear this, Margaret said. Emily considered it, then reached past it. Her hand settled on faded blue fabric. Margaret smiled immediately. I wondered if you would. Emily slipped into the old dress and turned toward the mirror. She had restored the waist again, strengthened the sleeves, and carefully cleaned the fabric. Yet one small section of white stitching remained visible inside the hem. She had refused to replace it. An hour later, Emily entered the gala beside her mother. The room looked almost exactly as it had the year before, but Emily did not. People greeted her by name. Ranch owners asked about upcoming designs. A regional retailer wanted to schedule a meeting. None of it changed the way she held Margaret's hand when they crossed the ballroom. Near the stone fireplace stood Cole, wearing the same brown boots and the tan coat Emily had repaired. He saw her and became still. Then his eyes dropped to the dress. You kept it. Emily smiled. You sound surprised. I learned not to underestimate your commitment to repairing things. Over the past year, they had rebuilt their relationship slowly. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became Sunday drives across Bennett Ranch. Cole stopped hiding behind vague answers, and Emily stopped assuming every kindness came with a debt attached. He showed her the ranch his father had left him. She showed him the first production room she rented with money from her contract. Neither rescued the other. They simply kept showing up. Cole glanced toward the hem of her dress. You missed a stitch. Emily looked down. No, I did not. She lifted the edge just enough to show him the tiny white thread. That one was Mom's. I left it. Cole looked across the room at Margaret, who was pretending not to watch them. Nearly 30 years. Still holding. Cole smiled softly. Then I suppose your family knows something about making things last. Music began near the center of the ballroom. Cole held out his hand. Dance with me. Emily placed her hand in his. They moved beneath the warm lights while the same room that had once made her feel small became nothing more than a room. When the song ended, Cole did not release her hand. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and removed a small wooden box. Emily stared at it, then at him. Cole, the first night I saw you, I noticed the dress because everyone else was laughing at it. His voice remained quiet. Then I noticed the woman wearing it was the only person in the room who did not need someone else to tell her what she was worth. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Cole opened the box, revealing a simple ring. I cannot promise I will always know how to fix things, but I can promise I will never choose silence when honesty is what you deserve. Emily Carter, will you marry me? She looked at Margaret, who was already crying and smiling. Then Emily looked back at the cowboy who had once watched from across the room and had spent a year learning when watching was not enough. Yes. Cole slipped the ring onto her finger as applause rose around them. Emily glanced down at the old blue dress, at the faded fabric and the stitches her mother had made before Emily was even born. Once, people had seen those repairs and thought they proved her family had little. Now Emily understood exactly what they proved. Money could buy something new. Love knew what was worth keeping.